Okay, so in last class we talked about the chemistry or chemical level. Today we have talked about the cellular level, right? The cells. And one step higher is the tissue. So chemical, cellular, then tissue. You know that. So now we'll talk about the tissue. There are 4 different types of tissues in the body. Epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nervous tissue, and muscle tissue. So those are 4 different types of tissues. First, we'll talk about the epithelial tissue. We'll talk about the connective tissue. Then we'll talk about the nervous and muscle tissue. Now, what is the tissue? Tissue is the collection of many similar cells, same kind of cells, many similar cells grouped together or unite to form a tissue. For example, in cardiac muscle, heart muscle, if you see the cells, all cells are cardiac muscle cells. Make sense? So they join to form cardiac muscle tissue. In your brain tissue, if you see, all neurons, right, are there. So neurons join together to form neural tissue. 4 different types of tissues: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve or neural tissue. In general, where you will find those different types of tissues. First, if you see the epithelial tissue where you will find in the covering of the body. Who covers the body? Skin. So outer surface of the skin is epithelial tissue. Lining of the cavities, inner lining, and tube-like structures. For example, can you name one tube-like structure in your body? Very good. So artery, vein, right? Those are tube-like. Arteries, veins. So you know that this is the artery wall, and this is the inner lining of the arterial wall. So you have the epithelial tissue here. Okay, inner lining of tube-like structures, epithelial tissue. What are other tube-like structures in your body? What do you think? Esophagus, right? Intestine. So inner layer or lining. Anything else? You have tube-like structures? Very good. Respiratory tract, right? Trachea, larynx, bronchi, right? So you see all those are tube-like structures, and innermost layer or lining is epithelial tissue. So inner lining of tube-like structures and cavities. Which organs have big cavities inside? Like your stomach, right? Hollow organ. Uterus, urinary bladder. Make sense? So if you see those structures, like this is your urinary bladder. Okay, this is the wall. and the inner lining of those hollow organs that have cavities, epithelial tissue. Okay, so inner lining of tube-like and hollow organs have epithelial tissue. Okay. Now let's see the muscle tissue. There are three types of muscle tissues: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. So those are three types of muscle tissues. Okay? Skeletal, cardiac, smooth. Skeletal muscles are attached to the skeleton. Attached to what? Skeleton, that means bones. Is it clear? So, skeletal muscles, these are what? All these muscles are skeletal muscles because they are attached to the skeleton. Is it clear? Cardiac muscle is only present where? In the heart wall, right? Smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is present in the wall of tube-like structures. Again, tube-like. In the wall of tube-like structures. Name me tube-like structures again. Intestine, esophagus, you said, right? Arteries, veins, right? Tube. And respiratory tract, right? Respiratory tract. Like your larynx, trachea, pharynx, right? Bronchi. So, in the wall, not inner lining. Inner lining is epithelial, but in the wall of tube-like structures, you have a smooth muscle, as well as in the wall of hollow organs like stomach, urinary bladder, uterus. In the wall, you have smooth muscle. Okay. So those are three different types of muscle tissues and where you will find them. Clear? Let's quickly review. So, epithelial tissue is found where?
On the outside.
Yes, that means the skin, outer layer of the skin. Make sense? So body surface, covering. And inner lining of which structures? Tube-like and hollow organs. Is it clear? Okay. Then muscular tissue or muscle tissue. How many different types of muscle tissues you have? Three. Skeletal muscles are attached to the bones or skeleton. Make sense? Cardiac muscle tissue is present in the wall of the heart. And a smooth muscle in the wall of tube-like and hollow organs. Make sense? Good. Now, connective tissue. Connective tissue is the most common or widely distributed tissue in the body. In many structures, you have connective tissue. For example, connective tissue is present in many structures, or many structures are formed by connective tissue. Bones are formed by connective tissue. Cartilages are formed by connective tissue. Fats or adipose tissue, connective tissue. Tendons, ligaments, blood, all these belong to connective tissue. Okay? A very widely distributed tissue in the body. In many structures you will find connective tissue. Then neural tissue is only present in the nervous system. That means in the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. Those three structures form the nervous system, you know that. So, nervous tissue or neural tissue, same thing, in the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. Okay? So those are the locations of 4 different types of tissues. Epithelial tissue. If we see the classification of epithelial tissue, epithelial tissue is classified based on the location and cell shape and layers. So we classify the epithelial tissue in 2 different ways. One is by location, another way is by looking at the shape of the cells and layers. So by location, we classify the epithelial tissue into covering and lining epithelium and glandular, inside the glands epithelium. Where they are located? In the covering of the body, inner lining, as well as inside the glands. So those epithelial tissue are present inside the gland. Those are glandular. Those form the covering, skin surface, and inner lining of tube-like hollow organs. Those are covering and lining epithelium. By looking at the shape, columnar, squamous, cuboidal, transitional. Okay. By looking at the shape, we divide the epithelial tissue into columnar, squamous, cuboidal, transitional. Columnar. If you see the shape of the cells in columnar epithelium, the cells are tall. So these are the cells and nucleus inside. So you see, the cells are tall and height is more than the width. Make sense? Height is more than the width, breadth. Okay. So, like columns, in big buildings, use the columns. So the cells are like that, tall. Squamous. The word squamous came from, the scale of fish. Scale of fish. It's like very thin, right? Flat. So the cells are like that, like flat, like this. Nucleus. Squamous. Okay, flat. Cuboidal. I have shown you before, cubical shape. That means height and width almost same. Like cubical shaped cells. So cuboidal. Transitional. Transitional epithelial cells change their shape. That's why transitional. They're not fixed. Make sense? Sometimes flat, sometimes columnar or cuboidal. So that's why this is called transitional. Okay? So change their shape, not fixed. Okay. So by looking the shape of the cells, we divide into columnar, squamous, cuboidal, transitional. Now, layers. How many layers are there? If you see that epithelial cells form single layer, that is called simple. Simple means one layer, single layer. If you see more than one layer, it is called stratified, multiple layer. Make sense? One layer is what? Simple. And multiple layer, stratified. Is it clear? Okay. Now you tell me, this is what type of cells?
Columnar.
Columnar, right? How many layers? One. So it is simple columnar. Make sense? This is simple columnar. This is what? Simple squamous. Simple cuboidal, right? Now if I add more layers, is it simple anymore?
No.
Now it is what?
Stratified.
Stratified squamous. Make sense? Stratified columnar. Make sense? Stratified cuboidal. Make sense? So that's how we classify based on the shape of the cells and number of layers. So those are the ways of classification. Epithelial cells have some, or epithelial tissue has some important properties. How they are different than other tissues. See, epithelial cells, you can see here, upper end which is free, called the apical or free end, and basal or attached end. Okay, so the cells, one end is attached, the other end is free, apical and basal ends. The cells, you see, always when I draw the epithelial tissues here, always I put the cells side by side, right? Like this. So the cells are attached by intercellular junctions. You remember I talked about the intercellular junctions, tight junction, gap junction, desmosomes. So in case of epithelial tissue, the cells are held together by special attachment. So that is another property. Okay. In some epithelial cells, at the apical end, you will see hair-like structures. Hair or cilia. Okay? Like brush border. Not all, but sometimes we'll see that. Another is regeneration. High rate of regeneration. If the epithelial cells or tissue dies, quickly new tissue is formed or new cells are formed. You already know that. I said outer surface of the skin is epithelial tissue, right? Covering epithelium, remember that? And you already know that skin dies, right? You'll see sometimes skin, if it is dry, right, comes off. Quickly new skin is formed. So that is high rate of regeneration. When you eat something very hot, many cells in your mouth, inside the mouth, the lining is epithelium, right? So inner lining is being destroyed, right? You know, and quickly new cells are being formed, tissue is being formed. So high rate of regeneration. Avascular, A means absence, no blood vessels. A indicates absence. No blood vessels are present in the epithelial tissue. Now the question is then how the epithelial cells stay alive, gets oxygen and nutrition if there is no blood vessel here. It gets nutrition and oxygen from underlying connective tissue. Epithelial cells are attached to the connective tissue. This is connective. This is connective tissue. Always epithelial cells or tissue is attached to the connective tissue. So from the connective tissue has the blood vessels, vascular. So from here by diffusion, you know diffusion, nutrients and oxygen enter into the epithelial tissue. Makes sense? From underlying connective tissue. Is it clear? So although it is a muscular, no blood vessel in it, it gets nutrition and oxygen from underlying connective tissue. So those are some important properties of epithelial tissue. I said what? The cells have free or apical end and attached end, right? Cells are attached to each other, right? By intercellular junctions or joinings, held together. I said high rate of regeneration, quickly can regenerate. You know that epithelial cells die. And what did I say? Cilia are here, are present at the apical end in many cases, not all. And another thing, avascularity, absence of blood vessels, right? No blood vessels in it. So if I ask you, write few important properties of the epithelial tissue, these should be the answer, okay? Classification, I have already talked about that. Okay. Now, in next few slides, we'll see different types of epithelial tissue, real picture under the microscope. And I mentioned only few locations where you will find that kind of epithelial tissue. You need to remember those, okay? So you can underline or write it down. Those I will mention. Those are important, okay? The locations. You tell me, these are alveoli. Where you have alveoli in the body? Inside the lungs, right? You know that. So these are alveoli under the microscope. So the wall of the alveolus, you have this epithelial tissue. So let me draw it here so you will be able to understand. So alveolus. Now, in the wall, if you look carefully under the microscope, the cells are like this. Nucleus. So this is a cell nucleus, another cell nucleus, another cell nucleus. This is the wall of the alveolus. Okay? You tell me, what kind of epithelium is this? These cells are flat or columnar or what? Flat, right? Single layer or multiple layer? So what is this? Simply squamous. Make sense? So in the wall of the alveoli, you have simple squamous. Now another location, this is the blood vessel, and in the inner lining, you know lining is epithelial tissue, the cells are like this. Again, so if I ask you, what kind of cells are these? Again, squamous. Make sense? And single layer, right? So simple squamous. So inner lining of the blood vessels, you have simple squamous. Alveolar wall, you have simple squamous. Also inside the heart, if you see this is the heart, this is the wall of the heart, innermost lining or layer, simply squamous like this. Okay, so inner lining of the heart, inner lining of the blood vessels, and the wall of the alveoli. Make sense? Those three I have mentioned, you have to remember. Okay? Simply squamous. In the lab, also you'll see this tissue. Okay? Under the microscope. So this is simple squamous. If you see these tube-like structures present inside the kidneys and glands, these are called ducts. Have you heard the word duct? You did, right? In the house we use the ducts. Tube-like, right? Structures. So inside the kidney you have ducts, inside the glands you have ducts, okay? And in the wall of those ducts you have the simple cuboidal. How will you know this is simple cuboidal? If you look very carefully, these ducts, you see the wall, these are the cells like this, cubical shaped cells, nucleus. So this is one cell, you see, cubical, this is another cell, so one layer of cubical shaped cells. Make sense? Simple cuboidal. Okay. The problem under the microscope is it is not that easy. When you see the things under the microscope, it's very complicated. Okay, so you have to use your, brain. If you look here, you see some in some cells the boundaries are not clear, but at least find one good one. This one has clear boundaries. See that? So rests are similar, same type of cells. Okay, so this is cuboidal. By looking at that, shape, you can say this is cuboidal. Okay, so write it down. In the ducts of the kidneys and glands, you have simple cuboidal. Kidney ducts or tubules, same thing, and glands. Here, if you see, this is a single layer, and these are the cells. What kind of cell is this? Columnar, right? So this is simple columnar. Make sense? Single layer of tall columnar cells. Where you will find the simple columnar? In your gastrointestinal tract, but not everywhere. Where? From stomach and below. Stomach and below. Inner lining of the stomach and the structures below the stomach. Now you tell me, you have a stomach, right? Then below the stomach you have what? And below the small intestine you have? Very good. So in the inner lining of stomach, small intestine, large intestine, right? You have simple columnar. Is it clear? Okay. Above that, above the stomach you have what? Anybody? Esophagus. It is not simple squamous. Stratified squamous. That's why I said stomach and below. Okay? Above is different. Okay. Let's see any other structure you need to remember. So digestive tract or gastrointestinal tract, stomach to anal canal. Another structure you write down, that's inside the gallbladder and uterus. Gallbladder and uterus. So stomach, small intestine, large intestine, gallbladder, uterus. Let's see the next one. This is called Pseudo-stratified ciliated. You did not see this one here. Why? When I talked about different types of epithelial tissues, I didn't mention this. What is this? Pseudo-stratified columnar. If you see this tissue under the microscope, you'll see the cells are like this, nucleus. Now you tell me, this cell is what? Columnar, right? This one also? This one also? Columnar. But the height is different, right? Although all these cells are columnar, their height is what? Different. How many layers here? Only one layer. But the height is different, right? So the nuclei are also located in different locations, right? So if you see this under the microscope, in this case you see it is easy, right? All cells same height, nuclei are located in the same locations, right? This is although simple one layer of columnar, simple, but when you see it under the microscope, it will give you an impression of multiple layers. It will look like multiple layers because nuclei are like this, right? Height of the cells are like this. So when you see under the microscope, it will give you a false impression of multiple layer, although it is a single layer. Make sense? So that's why it is called pseudo. Means what? Pseudo, false, right? Pseudo stratified. That means false multiple layer. It's actually single layer. So that's why this is called pseudo stratified columnar. Actually single layer. And one thing about pseudo-stratified columnar is you have cilia at the apical end. Okay? So you'll see many soft hair-like structures, a bit like this. Now you tell me, what do you think? Where you'll find this kind of epithelial tissue? Where you need many cilia? No. Inside the nose, inside the trachea, upper respiratory tract, nasal cavity, trachea, main bronchi. Why? Secretion of mucus occurs, right? Inside the upper respiratory tract, secretion of what? That slippery mucus, right? So that mucus gets easily dirty because you are inhaling air, right? The dust particles are getting attached to sticky surface. Make sense? So that mucus must be moved away, cleaned up. So there are millions of cilia beating like this, like brooming the surface. Make sense? So clearing the mucus. Mucus is being secreted, clearing it. Make sense? So just think that where you need cilia, you need inside the nasal cavity, right? Inside the trachea and upper respiratory tract. Okay. So you see here, these are cilia. Okay. And mucus is secreted like here and cleaned up. Okay. Here you see, this is stratified squamous. Why? If you just look at this part, don't look at this part. If you see this part, see many layers of flat cells. Many layers of flat cells. And that's why it is stratified squamous, this one. Stratified squamous, first thing you need to know, write it down. Stratified squamous is found in those areas where the chance of friction is high. Chance of what? friction is high. Because many layers protect, right? Many layers, single layer cannot protect. It will be easily destroyed, right? Many layers give protection. So where the chance of friction is high, you need stratified squamous. So tell me, where you get friction all the time? Skin surface, right? Surface of the skin. You have a stratified squamous. How about inside the mouth? Friction? Yes, because you chew the food, right? You crush the food, right? So friction is high. So the oral cavity or mouth. Esophagus. I told you stomach and below is what? Simple columnar, right? But above is stratified squamous. Above the stomach is what? Esophagus, oral cavity, mouth, right? Where the chance of friction of food, right, in the inner lining is high. Now, when the food enters into the stomach, what happens? The food becomes liquid. In your stomach, you have liquid food. So friction is not there, right? But inside the mouth, you have dry, right, hard food. And when it passes, when you swallow, the chance of friction in the esophagus is high, right? So it's a narrow tube. And food is still in solid form, semi-solid. Is it clear? So where I said skin surface, right? Oral cavity and esophagus, above the stomach. And and vagina, the lining is stratified squamous. So those are the areas. Now one more thing about stratified squamous. If you see stratified squamous in dry surface, that is called keratinized. It's mentioned here. Yeah. Keratinized stratified squamous. There are two types. One is called keratinized, the dry surface, and non-keratinized in the wet surface. Okay, so it's keratinized stratified squamous and non-keratinized stratified squamous. So skin has which one? Keratinized. Make sense? Of course, it's stratified squamous, but keratinized type, right? Inside the mouth? No. It's wet, right? Wet surface. Transitional epithelium. The cells change their shape. Where you will find transitional? Urinary bladder. Write it down. Urinary bladder, ureter, and part of urethra. So basically urinary tract. Urinary bladder, ureter, part of urethra. You have transitional. So one way to say, simple, is where you have urine. Where you have urine. Make sense? Urine is stored in the bladder, right? Passes through the ureter, right? And urethra. Make sense? Now why? Now the question is, why? There must be a reason. Why transitional is in those areas you have urine. Transitional epithelium doesn't allow the fluid pass through it. Doesn't allow what? Fluid pass through. Make sense? So urinary bladder does what? This is your urinary bladder. Inside the bladder you have what? Urine. And urine stays there, right? All the time. You have urine there. And inner lining is transitional epithelium here. And I said transitional doesn't allow fluid pass through it, right? So urine will not be able to get back into the body. If it allows, then what's the point of producing urine, right? If it again goes back into the body. From the bladder, it should do what? Get out from the body, right? It should not get back into the body. So that's why you have transitional there. Make sense? Number one, function is it prevents the fluid pass through it. Number two, transitional epithelium, the cells can change what? The shape, right? By changing the shape, it allows the bladder to expand and contract. When now you tell me, this is the bladder. When the bladder expands, get big, the cells will get what? More pressure, right? So will get flat. When it gets smaller, get more like tall. Make sense? It's like it has elasticity, right? So because of that, the urinary bladder can expand and contract without destroying the layer. Make sense? Without destroying the lining. If the lining is destroyed, then urine will be able to get back into the body, right? So we don't need that. So that's why. Very important. Those two are the important functions of transitional. By changing the shape, it allows expansion and contraction, absorbs the pressure. Number two, prevents the urine or fluid getting back into the body. So those are important epithelial tissues and their locations and how they look like. Now, stratified cuboidal, stratified columnar, those are present only very few areas. Only very few areas. Those I have mentioned, their locations, just remember those. So we have finished epithelial tissue. Now we'll talk about the connective tissue, another type of tissue, which is the most widely distributed tissue in the body. First, I'll show you how we classify the connective tissue. I have already mentioned the locations of connective tissue. This is how we classify connective tissue. Okay. First, we divide. You need to write it down. This will be helpful for your lab too. Today's lecture, tissue, is very helpful for your lab because you will do the tissue lab after this. So this will give you a very good idea. So connective tissue classification. We divide the connective tissue first into connective tissue proper. This is the main type, proper. And then bones, cartilages, blood. Okay. Or right here, instead of blood, fluid type connective tissue. Okay. So first we divide the connective tissue into connective tissue proper, that's the main type, then bones, cartilages, and fluid. connective tissue proper is divided into loose type and dense type. Loose and dense. Why one type is called loose, another type is called dense? In loose, you have no or few fibers. No or few fibers. That's why it is loose. In dense, you have plenty of fibers. A lot of fibers, heavily packed in dense. That's why it is called dense. Densely packed fibers. Make sense? So that's why one is loose, another is dense. Loose is 3 types. So this is a big classification.